Welcome to a new episode of My Mood and Food. And this week we are talking about gluten and gluten intolerance and
Mm,
whether that is a myth or not, which is probably a bit triggering for some people, I would imagine, just
probably.
even saying that because,
Yeah.
lots of people have intolerances. And I
Mm.
do know that sometimes it's like language and the words we use. And so Margaret's going to dive into this, but my first question, but feel free to dive into whatever you were going to say. But my first question when I realised this, what we're talking about is this kind of difference between an allergic reaction, an allergy, and
Yes.
an intolerance or
Yeah,
a sensitivity.
exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
And I will touch on the likes of celiac disease
Mm,
and, what we consider what it could be in regards to intolerance rather than it being specifically linked to people thinking the celiac or a gluten sensitivity. But over the last, I'd say probably decade or so, gluten's got this really, really bad rep. And oh, there's a coffee.
get it on camera. If you're listening, you can't see my beautiful cup with blue butterflies on.
Enjoy the little things.
Yes. Cheers.
Cheers. But yeah, it really has got this bad rap, and everyone seems to have an opinion on gluten. So just before we start, I'm going to make it clear I'm not talking about, although I'm going to mention celiac disease. This isn't specifically focused on celiac disease. As if you do have that, then yes, gluten's a very big problem.
Hmm. And
So I'm
people who have celiac, I'm guessing, know that because they've probably
yeah,
been through the mill with it and gone and got tested and diagnosed and all the rest of it.
absolutely, absolutely, and it's how they actually diagnose it. You've actually got to have gluten for quite some time, as far as I'm
Mm,
aware, so they can see that it's having a certain effect on the body. But there's a wealth of information out there that really does actually demonize gluten and
mm.
label it to be unhealthy and even dangerous. When, mm, to be quite honest with you, is that really true? Because if you think about it, there's been a huge surge of gluten-free food,
Mm.
gluten-free diets.
It's never as good either, is it?
No,
I have
no,
friends that have one of those things. I'm not sure
yeah.
exactly whether it's an intolerance
Mm.
sensitivity, as I just said, but if they bring a gluten-free pizza to the party, it's like, oh, avoid that one. It's a shame, isn't it? If you
Yeah,
can't have it because if you are going to eat the pizza, you want the proper one because it doesn't
yeah,
taste as nice.
yeah. But that market's growing to over
Mm,
17 billion
mm,
globally. So it kind of makes you think there's huge profits at stake. Is gluten really the enemy it's being out made to be? Because it's such a profiting industry now to have those
mm.
gluten-free products. And
And where
to the
there's money to be made, the
more than make it.
marketeers, will drive that
Yeah.
message home, won't they? So that people that maybe haven't got the actual intolerance or sensitivity will even start to think, maybe I should be buying this stuff just as a
Yeah.
health, improvement.
Yeah, it's a health choice. I mean, to
Yeah.
the point now that heck, you can see chicken being labeled as gluten-free or shampoos being labeled as gluten. It's like,
Really?
when on earth did chicken have gluten in? So it's
I've never
things like,
seen that.
yeah, it's things like that. It's just like, what the
That
hell?
sounds really gimmicky, doesn't it?
Yeah. So, yes, celiac disease is an absolute proven complete allergy to gluten, and it's an autoimmune condition which it actually attacks your very tissues when you eat gluten. And even the smallest amount can lead you to vomiting, having severe diarrhea, severe fatigue, weight loss, mouth ulcers, loads of different kinds of symptoms with it. But also, it can often be confused with much more common IBS. because you can obviously have the likes of diarrhea from that, bloating,
Mm-hmm.
upset stomach. But for the likes of celiac disease, the likes of mouth ulcers and things like that, you can see there is a difference, but you can easily get confused between the two. And the more and more information that's out there when it comes to the likes of gluten-free, people think it is, a healthy choice.
Surely it's down to if you have got that allergy and severe intolerance towards the celiac type scale, fine, you will know that. But surely otherwise, it's about just being aware of how you feel after you eat certain foods. So I suppose knowing what foods gluten is in, as in, having that education and knowing that it's not really going to be found in chicken and protein and things like that. Just knowing what kind of foods, and you can inform us of that, but I'm guessing it's kind of more like the bready, yeasty type, like the pizzas and the breads and things, because it's that elastic type substance, isn't it? And going back to like episode 1 that we did on bread and things like that, it's like episode 1 was our first podcast. If you haven't caught that, go back and catch it. Similar type of advice, maybe like checking how you feel, maybe go for a healthier choice like a brown bread, do maybe a food diary, notice if there's that bloating, or what are some of the symptoms and side effects of an intolerance where you might advise people to just reduce that gluten just to see, or eliminate it and keep a diary.
So the kind of negativity that gluten actually neatly ties into the food industry is an emerging trend regarding clean eating.
Yeah.
And there's actually been a specific study correlating a high gluten diet with weight gain. So that's why a lot of people may think that gluten is a bad thing, because it's correlating with weight gain. But the study was actually conducted within rats. And the sheer amount that when you do take these studies on board, it's literally given a rodent or whatever animal or human it is a severe amount of this stuff to see what kind of reaction it is. So the severe amount that they were given would have to be a ridiculous amount of gluten to get the same results.
Yeah, and surely then that's not even about the gluten. That's not a controlled study, because if you ate a load of slices of bread every day, you'd put on weight, wouldn't you? It's nothing to do with the gluten, and you'd feel really stuffy, sluggish.
Exactly. So, and also studies have found that restriction of gluten, because when you restrict gluten, you're kind of restricting like whole grains and stuff as well, can actually increase the risk of heart disease.
So do we need gluten?
Well,
is it kind of something that, because I've not really looked into that in terms of like minerals and all of that kind of thing, that by the way, can we do a podcast on that? Because I was listening to somebody else talk about minerals, so I meant to message you about that. Sidetrack squirrel, but focus.
Yeah.
Gluten as in an ingredient or a substance, what would you call it? Do we need it in the body?
Literally, it's a protein. Gluten is a protein, and it's found in wheat, whether it's wheat berries, durum wheat, or whatever. It's found in spelt as well, and it's also found in rye as well. So it is a naturally occurring thing, but it can be extracted, and this is where quite a lot of people, I think, might, take note here. It can be extracted, and it can be concentrated and added to food and other products to add protein, texture, and flavour. And it extremely works well in binding agent to hold processed foods together.
So there's that correlation again between you're thinking about the gluten, but actually if it's because it's just the same message in terms of don't eat too much processed food, eat more natural foods versus looking at stripping out gluten.
Exactly. So a lot of the time when people avoid gluten, but also eliminate things like beer.
Mm.
And I'm not going to deny that wheat and rye can cause issues if you've got IBS, but simply because you're having to think more about what you eat and you're making better choices, that can make a whole big difference. Because if you're avoiding gluten, then you've got to think, oh, okay, what doesn't contain gluten?
Mm.
So you are going to naturally go for less ultra processed foods. So is that the issue rather than the actual gluten
Yeah,
itself?
interesting. And if you then did that kind of diet, trying to think of another word, but that kind of change to your eating patterns,
Yeah.
but you introduce some of that other like rye and spelt and those things that you mentioned that would be more healthy choices, but
Mhm.
actually still contain gluten. That would be a good controlled
Exactly.
experiment for people to do for themselves.
Yeah.
Because, as much as we can look at other studies and that, like you say, they can be skewed and things like that. So there's no substitute for knowing your own body, having
Exactly.
that awareness and just getting to grips with. We always want to talk about coffee and poo in every episode. It just kind of happens, doesn't it? But getting to grips with your poop and
Yeah.
the texture and the
Yeah.
regularity, like we talked about last time. We are going to do a full podcast on
Tune
poop. We
into your
promise that.
flow. Tune
Tune
into your
into your
flow.
flow, yeah. And your body, those
Yeah.
symptoms in terms of that, it's the bloating that people and that gassiness, isn't it?
Hmm.
So maybe stripping everything out and then slowly adding some of the healthier ones back in, you could
Yeah.
then see. Would you
See what
say
really does
recommend that?
affect you. Definitely. That's got to do with quite a few clients who've gone down the road of, oh, I feel it's this, I feel it's this, because this happens. It's like, okay, let's start stripping things out.
Mm.
But when we put things in, let's just twist it a little bit and see whether it's actually the quality of food that you were eating or the actual food type itself.
Yeah, really good, yeah.
Mm. Because
It's
a
really good
lot,
because it really makes people think instead of just it's like a blunt hammer
yeah,
otherwise, isn't it? A blunt
mm,
instrument rather than it's fine tuning it.
yeah, because a lot of the commercially produced gluten-free products are often really, really highly refined
Mm.
and they're huge in calories, and a lot of them are quite high in sugar. So if you're thinking that gluten-free is a better option, that might not be the case because you can quite a lot of the time you actually get consistently higher blood glucose peaks with having gluten-free products rather than the actual original wheat or rye or barley varieties.
Mm. So if somebody feels like they've got a gluten intolerance or something like that, what would you recommend for them to do to check out whether that's the case?
I would really look at the food that you're actually eating to start off with. Is it, and I put it into kind of three categories. So whether it's ultra processed, processed, or non-processed. Your
Yeah,
non-processed is your fruit and veg and your meat that you can actually see what it is. It's not an ingredient, it's an actual whole food. Then you've got you know, your processed food, which is anything from, say, a good peanut butter. That is a processed food because it's had to go through a process.
mm,
Or even jumbo oats, they've been taken out of the field and blah blah
yeah.
blah.
But you
That's
can
still a
still look
process.
at
You
the
can see
ingredients and see
exactly.
that there's not many in there.
Exactly. And then you've got your ultra processed food, which is the stuff that we all see within the likes of packets in it, the stuff that's got, I don't know how many ingredients, emulsifiers,
Additives, yeah, E
additives,
numbers, yeah.
natural food, natural ingredients in there.
Yeah.
Um, that is your ultra processed. what is the combination of those kind of foods that you're having in your diet? What kind of
Mm.
percentage are you going for that kind of food to compare to the actual whole food?
And a lot of the time, it's just like, I know for me, it's just about time and easiness and being lazy. Like, literally, just for my lunch today, and often on a Monday, I don't have lunch. I thought I tend to skip it because I'll have an early tea. I've
Yeah.
had like my yogurt. Regular listeners will know that I like my Greek yogurt. So I'd had that like 10 o'clock or something just to allow that
Yeah.
fast. Been left it till about 10 o'clock. Then sometimes I won't have any lunch. But I thought, oh, I remember because I'm doing the recording of the podcast, I'll try and have some lunch. And the temptations to grab that bread and things like that, isn't it? But we had stuff in the fridge to make a salad, so I just made a salad. But that felt like more effort. It was like 10 minutes instead of 3 minutes or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
But because it's a nice day, because it's warm today, it's like, oh, well, I'll just put that extra bit of effort in. But I think that's the case. So with a lot of people, it's time and the ultra processed, sorry, foods they're
Quick.
just more convenient, aren't they? So
Mhm.
getting a little, maybe a tally chart or something would be a good idea,
Absolutely.
wouldn't it? And just go, what have I eaten today? Just what's it all made up of? And I just love that kind of looking at that step back and just maybe making even just a couple of smaller tweaks towards the non-processed first before you go stripping out full food groups and saying you're
Exactly.
allergic or something.
Oh
It's
God, yeah.
really,
Yeah.
really good advice.
Absolutely. Really start you know, looking at the balance between them, see if you can make some conscious changes,
Mm,
and then just keep on really, as you said, monitoring
monitor, yeah,
and just
yeah,
keep that journal and
yeah.
say, what is going on? If
So
I
you
eat
just
that,
really
does
get
this
to know
happen?
your own body then, don't you? Keep a little diary, write down how how regular you were and what's been going on, what gurgling in your tummy and what noises and things. Oh, when I ate this, I felt like this. Even whether you felt more energetic or tired, just
Yeah.
anything like that.
Track those
Yeah.
emotions as well, because that is all
Emotions,
tied in.
yeah.
That is
Gut
all
health,
tied
yeah.
in.
Oh, fabulous. We could talk about this all day. I think that's really, really good when it comes to sending this out. I know we're always busy and we do a little post and things like that. It's always like, oh, we need to share it, but I think we really need to get the message out for people to listen to this one. So I hope we do that and do a good job. We are on video again. Hello. So if you
Hello.
are listening and you fancy seeing our beautiful faces and you want to watch on the YouTube channel, check out the YouTube channel. I'd love for more people to subscribe to that because it just really helps the podcast reach more people. So if you just click that subscribe, it doesn't do anything, it doesn't cost anything except for helping us. So it's just a way you can give back. So follow, subscribe, and drop us a little comment. If you
Absolutely.
found this really useful, like I have, and you've had some like light bulb moments going off, if this resonates with you, just pop us a comment in, ask a question. Margaret will, I'm sure, answer any questions that you pop in
Yeah.
to the comments. You can private message us or whatever you want to do. That would be great. So thank you so much, Margaret,
Thank
for your
you.
time. Thank you for listening, and
Thank
we'll
you
see
very
you
much.
next time.
Bye bye.